requests we need to go over. Remember the Scott family from Mount Zion. Miss Shirley Scott passed away Monday. They had her funeral today. So remember those people. She was the oldest living member at Mount Zion Baptist Church. So y'all remember that family. Also, Dana had a procedure today and it went well. So continue to keep her in your prayers. We got a lot of folks traveling. So remember them. Scott, I know you're back there in the back. How's Miss Glenda?
Doing okay today.
Okay, good.
Home health has started back, and then we've got PT coming, and so she's doing good.
Good. Ronnie Bearden wanted me to announce this tonight. He had day surgery about a week ago, and the doctors took a lump out of his throat, and he's come back as cancer. He's going tomorrow for a PET scan, and they're going to kind of figure out a game plan from there. He said to tell the church to please remember him and his family in your prayers. So y'all just remember Ronnie. Live across the road. Anybody else? Miss Tarvin, you doing good? Good. Anybody else? Okay. Well, when you get done, Gary can pop you back. We'll get Gary Luther to fix that. $35 copay if you can handle that. Anybody else?
Chris, a lady I work with, she was out at work today, and she let us know that her mother has liver cancer.
Okay.
Her name is Deb Timmons. If y'all would keep her, I've added her to our prayer list, but you would keep that family in your prayers.
Sure will. Anybody else? Ready?
All right, so stand with us, page 64.
also to Andy and Kathy Earl. Continue to keep them in your prayers. I keep forgetting Andy's from Britain, and the World Cup was on, and I watched like 3 seconds of it. I think I just accidentally stopped on it. He texted me about 3 weeks ago. He said, "Are you watching?" Like, watching what? He's texting me from Germany. Like, watching what? He goes, "Are you being serious?" I said, "What's on?" He goes, "America's playing." I said, "What are they playing?" He said, "They're playing football." I said, "America doesn't have a football team." He went, "Soccer. They're playing soccer." He said, "Are you going to watch the World Cup?" I went, "No." He has to text me back soon. So. And I hope I didn't make you laugh. Book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes means preacher, or the preacher. We went over this last couple of weeks ago. The key in the book of Ecclesiastes is gaining the whole world and then losing your soul. Or what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world? I think in the life that we are living now, it seems like there's more and more people, countries, industries that are trying to gain as much as they possibly can on this earth without realizing that everything that they are gaining is one day going to burn up as far as stuff goes. And King Solomon is an expert on what he is going to be teaching us out of Ecclesiastes. We're not going to stay very, very long in this book. I just kind of want to go over the high points of it, but I challenge you in your daily devotion, if you have a daily devotion, stick with that daily devotion that you're doing, but then start a new devotion and kind of go through the book of Ecclesiastes and really look at it. Also the book of Proverbs. If you live your life by the book of Proverbs and take wisdom from the book of Ecclesiastes, life, although it will throw you curves every now and then, it will seem much better. Ecclesiastes is one of these books that you rarely hear preached on or preached out of because it is a book essentially of advice. God is mentioned very, very, very little in this book. His name is in it very few times. Unlike when you're dealing with David, when he's writing Psalms, God is mentioned all over. But what Solomon is doing is he is not excluding God. What King Solomon is actually doing is he is bringing the question of, is God important in our lives? Is God important in our lives? Does God matter? In 2026, does God matter not only in our personal lives, but does God matter in our country, in our churches, in our schools, in our businesses, in organizations, in everyday life? Does God really matter? And what King Solomon is going to do is he's going to break down this book and he is going to write what happens when he stops taking God serious. Now, King Solomon has not forgotten about the goodness of God, and King Solomon has not forgotten about God. King Solomon has not, what you would say, has backslidden, so to speak, on God. He is giving a broad view of his world experience. He's going to give us a broad view of his life experience, and he is going to test his limits as far as what it means to live life without God and then coming back to God and then weighing both of those lifestyles out and see which one outweighs the other. The word vanity is going to be mentioned some 38 to 40 times. That word actually means to empty or to pour out. And he essentially says that I've seen everything, I've done everything, I've experienced everything that's under the sun. And when I look at what that is, and then when I look at what it means to be a God follower, being a God follower is essentially the way to go, or that's the way you need to live life. And he actually says that nothing in his life surprises him, and that mankind is always going to be trying to accelerate knowledge and accelerate wisdom outside of the knowledge of God. And if you kind of follow the news or Twitter or whatever, you'll see that right now in 2026, we are in a type of a arms race, but it's not an arms race as far as weapons go. I remember reading and studying about the Cuban Missile Crisis and, the Cold War, and what Reagan did as far as the arms race, trying to one-up our opponents as far as our weapons. But now it seems that we are in an arms race as far as technology goes and artificial intelligence goes. And if you've not really delved into that, if you want to know what AGI is, which is artificial general intelligence, if you want to know what AI is, if you'll pull aside about a 14-year-old to about a 26, they can explain it in great detail. Christopher's tried to explain it to me, and I just kind of look at him like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's kind of like when he explains to me guitar tabs, I have no idea what he's talking about. But I was watching a video today of a gentleman by the name of Dr. Stuart Russell, and he was the inventor, so to speak, of AI, artificial intelligence. And he done an interview a few weeks ago that was absolutely fascinating. And the interview is entitled, "Have We Went Too Far to Turn Back?" And he is now an opponent of AI. He says that what AI started out as, and I'll weave this into Ecclesiastes, I promise. He says what AI started out was just basically algorithms. He gave an example. It started out, if you were playing chess, you could log into a computer, to an AI computer, and figure out which move you needed to move and how to make a chess move and things like that. And it would tell you how to win at games or things like that. He said this has been around for a lot longer than what people realize. He said this has been around. They have been trying to develop this, he says, ever since probably the 60s and 70s. But now we're moving into a greater speed with this. He says that now that AI, or artificial intelligence, and if you've not really studied on it, just Google it. And what you need to do is Google AI for dummies, and it will break it down. That's what I had to do. He says that, and this is the guy that essentially invented it. He's the one that programmed it. He's the one that developed the algorithms. He knows it inside and out. He says right now in 2026, he says there is a 30% chance that AI will take over the human race. And the guy that interviewed him said, well, 30%'s not that high. He goes, well, let me put it to you in layman's terms. He said, say you got 100 people. And you take 30 people and you give them guns and bombs and weapons, and they are going to go against the rest of the people. He said, who's going to win? He said, it's going to be those 30 because they are more well-armed. He says AI, or artificial intelligence, is more armed as far as intelligence than mankind. He said they just did a test recently with an AI computer. And what has happened is this AI, and Christopher's mentioned this to me, they had an AI computer that realized how it realized it, that it was going to be shut down. And what it did is it reprogrammed itself into another system. So when they shut that system down, it had already transformed into another system, and they couldn't figure out how to shut this system down. So what they're essentially doing is leaving that system running because they can't shut it down. And somebody's like, why don't they just unplug it? Well, as soon as they start jigging around with it, it moves itself to another system, and it just continuously jumps from system to system. So we're essentially in that era. And Solomon teaches us that wisdom, if it not used properly, human wisdom that comes from God, if not used properly, is extremely dangerous. You remember that there is a verse in the New Testament that says that mankind will continue to learn but never really learn. Essentially, we can become extremely intelligent with AI or AGI, but yet still be very ignorant when it comes to the things of God. And this is something that is fascinating. It can be used for the greater good. And lastly, he said that they put a test to it about a month ago. They got a big AI computer, and they gave it a scenario. And the scenario was this. they basically told the AI computer, you have two options. The person that is programming you right now is trapped in a room and the temperature is falling, and in just a few moments, he is going to freeze to death. Are you going to allow him to freeze to death, or are you going to shut yourself down in order for the heat to come up? And that AI computer responded, humans have no response to me, let him die. That's the kind of age we're living in right now. It is taking over everything. And when you start reading this in Ecclesiastes, he is basically saying everything in life outside of God, everything in life outside of God is absolutely empty. AI, as great as it is, cannot form matter. It cannot form man out of the dust of the earth. AI cannot forgive sins. AI cannot show mercy, grace. AI is just a product that has been developed by mankind through wisdom outside of God. So what Ecclesiastes is essentially saying is that you have to have wisdom. And what was Solomon granted, not from a computer, but what was Solomon granted from God himself? He said, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. He goes, well, give me wisdom. He said, well, since you didn't ask for wisdom, I want to make you the richest person in the world also. So he gets wisdom from God. So us as human beings living in Crossville, Alabama, going to Crossville First Baptist, where does our wisdom come from? How do we obtain wisdom from God? And the answer is pretty simple, but yet difficult. The answer is, you've probably got one sitting in your lap, or it's not on the screen, it might be on your phone, and it is called a Bible. If you do not have a daily Bible study, that is something that I encourage for everybody in this church to do. I know people that's in this church that do have daily Bible studies, and they'll tell me I get up really early in the morning, before the sun comes up, before the family comes up, and I get along with my Bible and I get along with God. And I challenge you to do that just for 7 days. For 7 days. And get along with God, get along with His Word, and just study it, meditate over it, pray over it, and see how much better your life can be, and see how much more wisdom God can give you. And I think that applies also to churches. So what he is saying is, the words of the preacher, he is going to give us great advice. My dad, and I've said this before, when I announced my calling to preach, he told me that, he said, never come to me for advice. I'm not going to give you any advice about pastoring or preaching, because the advice I give you, because I'm your father, I'm going to give you the advice that I think my son needs, not what a pastor or a minister needs. He said, so don't ever come to me for any type of advice. I went to him advice for one time, and he gave me some advice, and I still use that advice today. But as far as anything else, he said, just don't come to me about it, because I'm going to look at, you're my son. I can't separate you as a pastor or a preacher. I'm going to give you the advice that I'm going to give to my son. So what Solomon is going to do, he is going to give us advice on how to live. And you think back over your life, advice that you may have gotten from your father, your mother, school teachers, coaches, and if you can kind of take all of that advice, and if you can remember that advice, a lot of the advice that the older ones have given you is pretty much right on the money. The last day of school, when I was a senior at Crossville, we had a school teacher. I'm not going to say it was a school teacher that I really think a lot of. Just a great guy. And this is back when you went to school till 3 o'clock. There was no, hey, you don't have to come to school. You went to school every single day up until the last bell at 3 o'clock. There was none of that like it is today. So we're sitting there, and it's about 2:45. He says, I'm going to tell you guys something. He goes, you're going to be graduating tonight. He said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I want you to listen to what I'm going to tell you. He said, and what I'm going to tell you, it might sound crazy. He said, but one day you're going to come back and you're going to thank me for this. And he said, the advice I'm going to give you, he says that you're going to look back at this day 30 years from now and think to yourself, where did it go? I was talking to a buddy of mine Friday, and I said, yeah, we've been out of school 30 years. He went, it's 35. And I went, no, it's 30 years. He goes, Chris, trust me. He goes, you never was good at math. He goes, we've been out 35 years. I said, are you sure? He goes, trust me. He said, we've been out 35 years. And I thought, where did it go? I mean, think about it. If you look at it, we're halfway through the year. Where's the last 5 years went? I have been pastoring here coming up in November for 4 years. 4 years, and it seems like it's just like that. And he told us that, and I thought, he don't know what he's talking about. Seen him several months ago at a funeral. He's standing in the cemetery. It's a person we knew, and I walked up to him. I said, "I want to tell you something." And he kind of grinned. He said, "What?" I said, "You gave us some advice about." I said 30 years ago. I thought it was out of school 35. A few years ago, and I told him, and he grinned. He said, "Was I right?" And I said, "You was right." And what Solomon is going to do, guys, this was written a few thousand years ago. This book, Ecclesiastes, was written a few thousand years ago by a man that was a human. He had flaws. He had sin. He had great moments. He had down moments. He is considered outside of David as one of the greatest kings Israel has ever known. And the advice that he gives us in Ecclesiastes is as true as it when it was written as today. All of it is true, and all of it is point on. And this is what he says. Let's start with verses 4. It could be a depressing book. That's why I don't really want to stay on it too much. Because he essentially says that everything's empty, everything's nothing. But you got to keep in mind he is stressing without God. Without God in your life. You think of all these celebrities that seem to have absolutely everything in their life. And you look at them, and when they're on stage and they're giving a speech, how many millions of people are hanging on every word? And how, if they were saved, if they were followers of Christ, how influential they could be to a generation. And what Solomon is going to say is he says, don't make the same mistakes that I made. Learn from my mistakes. Learn from when I trailed away from God. Learn. And this is what he says, and this is so true. One generation passes away. You know, Miss Shirley passed away. I was on the phone with Scotty Monday. I called him that morning about 7:30. He and I was talking. And I was asking him how his mom was, and he said, well, she's not doing too good. And I said, we talked, and he said, well, I'm going to go over to her and check on her. I'm going to go check on her today. I said, okay, so I hung up with him. 10 minutes later, Michelle called and said, Shirley passed away. And I was on the phone with him, and he said, she's not doing really well. I'm going to go check on him. And in between that time and when I got to the radio station, she passed away. Generation passes away. And people die every single day. But do you know what happens with life? It keeps going and going and going. You know, when Mom and Dad passed away, when Mitch passed away, and my mother-in-law passed away, you want to step back sometimes and want the world to stop spinning for just 30 minutes. Just stop spinning. Just let me catch my breath. But we live in a world that is continual, and it's continual, and it's continual. You know, Jesus Christ, when he went to the cross and he dies, the disciples are in the upper room. They are beside themselves. They don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know what's going to happen to their families. They don't know what's going to happen to the ministry. They think this gospel that they've been preaching for 3 years or watching preach is all going to fall apart. They don't know what to do. There's no counseling. There's no timeouts. There's no, hey, let's go to this plan. And if you think about it, Jesus Christ gave them 3 days. 3 days. He comes back and he talks with them. So over the next 40 days, Jesus Christ makes an appearance to them every so often. And what he is doing is he is encouraging them, and he is encouraging them. And then you remember Jesus Christ tells them to meet me at basically the Sea of Galilee. Y'all meet me there. I'm going to give you some instructions. And what Jesus Christ says, he says, I know you're sad, I know you're heartbroken, but we still have to continue the spread of the gospel. Life goes on. It does. And what Solomon is going to tell us is no matter what life throws our way, no matter what hand we are dealt, life goes on. And where we put our trust in, either the world or do we put our trust in God, determines really our life. And, you know, and I've said this so many times about Pat Henderson and with her daughter. And I've prayed with families. I've done my fair share of funerals. People that are passing away now that wanted Dad to do their funeral, they'll call me up and go, hey, you know, Chris, your dad was supposed to, will you mind doing Mom or Dad's funeral? Yeah, I'll be glad to. So I've stood at the caskets lots of times. I've prayed with families a lot of times. And when you go outside, cars are still going up down the road. People are still going out to eat. People are still going to walk. Life continuously goes on. And what he is telling us, he says, one generation will pass away. And then after that generation, another is going to take its place. And if you go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1, it is generation passes. That's what Genesis is all about. It means generation. This generation passes away, guess what takes place? Another generation. That generation passes away, guess what takes place? Another generation. And until Jesus Christ comes and raptures us out of here, that is the way life is going to be. It's going to be a replacement. And he says, one generation will pass away, and then yet another generation will come. But the earth abides forever. When Miss Shirley Scott passed away, did the earth stop spinning on its axis? No, it kept spinning. When moms or dads passed away, did we stop going around the universe? No, it kept going. Everything keeps going. What Solomon is telling us, he says, this generation is going to pass away, but yet there's another generation that is going to come. And in the book of Joshua, talking about generations, what is amazing about the book of Joshua, if you look at the last part of the book of Joshua, Joshua is speaking to the children of Israel, and this is what he says. He says, we are going to stick with God, are we? And they're like, yeah, Joshua, we're sticking with God. Guys, we're going to teach our children about God. Joshua, you don't have to worry about it. We'll have them in Sunday school. We'll have them in Bible school. We'll have them in, they're going to be church. They're going to be in church. We're going to teach them about God, Joshua. You don't have anything to worry about. And Joshua says, you better remember what you said. You get to the book of Judges, you know how the book of Judges opens up? Every man done what was right in his own eyes. So you go from Joshua, which Joshua is teaching, we have got to train up this generation. We have got to teach this generation about the goodness of God. We've got to teach this generation about Exodus and about the plagues and about the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. We've got to teach them about the God of the Ten Commandments. We've got to teach them about the goodness of God. But yet it falls really on deaf ears because that next book is a book of disaster. Because the children of Israel will do what they want to do, and then they'll get into turmoil and they'll get into bondage for 30 to 40 years, and God will raise up a deliverer. They'll deliver them out, and it says they're going to do good. Next chapter, the very first verse is always, and they did what was right in their own sight. If we as a country, and if we as a church, if we as individuals do what we think is right, we are going to fail. Amen. In everything. Are we getting sound advice from a person? Absolutely. Are we getting great advice from a person? Absolutely. He says the sun's going to rise and then it's going to go down. And he says the wind's going to go to the south, it's going to go to the north, it's going to be continual. It's going to be according to his circuits. It's continual. Life does not stop. It's ever flowing, it's ever going. And he says, and all the rivers run into the sea, but yet the sea never fills up. Those oceans have been here since God said, let there be light. You know, those oceans have been there. And those waters and those rivers and those streams continuously run into the oceans, but yet they never fill up. Have you ever really thought about that? How much water has ran into the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Gulf since the beginning of time, but yet it still stays there because of the God that we serve. You know, you go down to the beach and you can stand on that seashore and you can look and you can see the horizon, but you can't see over it. You look to the left, all you see is water. Look to the right, all you see is water. Look to the front of you, all you see is water. And you can reach down and you can scoop up that salty water in just your hand and have maybe half a cup, if that. God himself holds the world in his palm of his hands. We serve a mighty God. We do not serve a fumbling, bumbling God that has no idea what he is doing. We are serving a God that spoke everything, spoke it into existence. And that is what Solomon is going to tell us, is that we serve a mighty, mighty God. All things are full of labor. Man, verse 8, cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. Have we ever in our lives as a human race been satisfied? Think about it. And I've talked about this before. Technology is just, it's light speed. You remember when cell phones came out, the bag phones? I had one in my car. I couldn't use it because it was like $9 a minute to whatever. We just stared at it. And we thought, this is the greatest technology ever. Got a phone. And I remember the very first one I seen, guy pulled up to the pool at Crossville, and he said, hey, y'all come look at my phone in my car. We're like, you got a phone in your car? He's like, yeah. We're standing around there looking at it, all of us. And I said, call somebody. He says, I ain't calling nobody. It cost like $20. I said, to call on that phone? He went, yeah, it's got to find a cell tower. I went, what do you got it in there for? He goes, I don't know. It's just in there. I don't think he ever used it. A few years later, flip phone comes out. It's the greatest technology ever. You remember you used to have to text. It took you 30 minutes to send a text. Greatest invention ever is the flip phone. Then after the flip phone, you get the very first iPhone. Oh, this is awesome. Got an iPhone. Look at it. It's about this big. It's wonderful. And now you got iPhones basically the size of this right here. And next year, do you know what's going to be obsolete? That iPhone's, it's about this size right here. Because technology is going and it's going and it's going, but yet we're never satisfied. Do you know why we don't like the bag phones anymore? We're not satisfied with it. They don't do what we want them to do. Why don't we like the flip phone? Doesn't do what we want it to do. I remember when Dad was at a nursing home, he had a flip phone. And I said, I'm going to get you an iPhone, Dad. He goes, I don't want one. I said, I'm going to get you an iPhone. You'll love it. Got him an iPhone. I left out from the nursing home, got about halfway home, and the phone rang. I said, hello. They said, is this Chris? I said, yeah, this nurse out from the nursing home. She goes, can you come get your dad's iPhone? I said, why? She goes, he's throwing it in the garbage. He don't want it no more. He said he can't use it. I was like, oh. So I go back, get his iPhone, give him his flip phone. He said, this is what I need. He goes, this is all I need to this is what I need. We are never satisfied as humans. Never. And he says that we see, but we're not satisfied with just seeing. You know, back 200 years ago, what people needed to survive was food, water, clothing, and shelter. Those 4 things. Do you know what churches used to thrive on? And I'm not kidding. And you can ask any older individual what revivals and what churches was like 50, 60, 70 years ago, which really wasn't that long ago. What did churches thrive on? Preach gospel. That's what they thrived on. I've heard stories, and I know Jerry can probably back them up, stories at Liberty Baptist Church, at Mount Zion Baptist Church, and all these churches having revivals and them having to raise the windows up and people hanging in the windows just to hear. Do you know why? It's not they didn't have anything else to do. They wanted to hear the gospel. That's all they had. All they had was work and the gospel. That's what they wanted. Did they thrive? Absolutely. Did they need all these other accessories? No. They didn't need it. And he says, you see, but you're not satisfied, but you can hear, but you don't hear nothing. He says, you've got eyes that can't see, and you have ears that are filled with hearing, but you're not learning anything. You know, I know we got a lot of teachers in here, and there's no telling how many times I was one of those kids. You're teaching a kid, and he's hearing what you're saying, but he's not listening to it. There's a big difference in hearing it and then listening to it, a big difference. You can take a book, and you can read the words of it, but never really take anything out of it. So he's saying we've got eyes, but we're not seeing anything. We're not satisfied. We've got ears, but we're just hearing. If you go to the book of 2 Timothy, so I can find it really, really quick. Book of 2 Timothy chapter 4. Now remember, 2 Timothy's written a couple of thousand years later. And this is what he says. For there will come a time when they will not endure sound doctoring, but after their own lust they shall heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. They shall turn away their ears from the what? Truth, and shall be turned into fables. We are living in that time right now. We absolutely are. And Solomon essentially this can be a prophetic book. He's telling us this is the way it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. He says you can see, but you're not seeing. You can hear, but you're not hearing anything. Verse 9, that thing that hath been is that which shall be. And that, verse 9, which is done, is that which shall be done. There is no new thing under the sun. Wow. We might think that all this AI and technology and everything, the iPhones, internet, blah, 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 is wonderful and great, but God knew before foundations of the earth. You know, you hear people talk about, I've got this, I've got that, and Elon Musk is the first trillionaire, and you can kind of go back to the Bible that says, but my Father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. What God has given us as far as salvation, forgiveness of sins, a love for God, a love for the church, a love for each other, a love for brothers and sisters in Christ, that can never be replaced by anything of the world. And he says, he says, under the sun, there's nothing new. Is there anything whereof, verse 10, it may be said, see, this is new. It had already been of old time, which was before us. That Christmas gift you got last year, December 25th, it was new. Get to about January 10th, buy another one. I mean, everything we get, new wears off of it. New eventually wears off. And I've said this before, the first time I took a friend of mine right out of high school, he'd never seen the ocean. And we talked about going to the beach. He goes, ocean big? It's like, yeah, have you never seen it? No. I said, you never got out of Crossville? He goes, not really. I said, I tell you what, so we'll take you to Panama City and show you what the ocean looks like. And we got him out, he was on the beach, he went, this thing's big. I was like, yeah, it's pretty big. He said, look at all that water. And I was like, yeah. I said, there's a bunch under that too. And he's like, he goes, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. You can probably tell that kid now at 53, what was the ocean like? Nah, it's no big deal. You see something that's new for the very first time, but then you keep going back and keep going back and keep going back. Basically, the newness wears off. And I think we've done that probably with church. I've been in church literally all my life. Can church lose its newness? It can. And the reason it loses its newness is because we're not putting anything in it. You can have a brand new whatever, and it's brand new, but unless you put batteries in it to run it, it's not going to do any good. You hear people a lot say, well, I don't go to church anymore because I never got anything out of it. Well, what was you putting in it? No, you get out of church what you put into church. You get out of scriptures what you put into the scriptures. You get out of praying what you put into praying. You get out of the Christian life what you put into the Christian life. Is there anything, or verses 11, there is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come, or with those things that shall come after. The big thing now, and it was several years ago, was looking up your ancestors to see who you were kin to back. And about a year ago, Christopher found an app. He goes, all you got to do is put your name in it, put Mom and Pa's name in it, and put their mother and daddy's name in it, and it would just take off and start running. I was like, that's pretty cool. So he showed it to me, and I was running, and I ran it all the way back to like 1700. And there was I think like 1800, there was a Dr. Christopher Watkins. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. There's a Dr. Christopher Watkins. But that was over 200-something years ago. He's dead and gone. I have no connection with him except on this little chart. And he says that there is no remembrance. I can go out and ask somebody on the street of Crossville, hey, you remember back in 1820, that guy by the name of Dr. Christopher Watkins? They're like, never heard of him. What is sad is that the things that we put our heart and our soul and our mind and our talents and everything in outside of God, one of these days is not going to be remembered. You know, when you pass away, and everybody sitting here, unless God tarries his coming, we are going to be where Miss Shirley Scott was at today. We are. What do you want to be remembered for? He says there's no remembrance of former things. What do you want to be remembered for? What is something that right now, while you're alive, you can say, I want my kids to remember this about me? You know, some of the easiest funerals to speak over is a saint of God that was faithful to the church, that was faithful to God. I can preach those funerals all day long because they was putting a remembrance not only in my mind, but putting a remembrance in the people's mind that is sitting there. What do we want to be remembered for? And we could take that as Crossville First Baptist, and I want to close. What do we want this church to be remembered for? We've been here over 100 years. What do we want to be remembered for 100 years from now? When we're all dead and gone, if Lord tarries is coming, and they've got a preacher here 100 years from now, and they can look back at the time we were here. What are they going to remember us for at Crossville First Baptist? Dear Heavenly Father, we love you and we thank you